Welcome back to The Explainer. So if you've been following along with us, you know we've really been digging into the shared sickness of AI and the news. We've looked at how open information systems just inevitably decay under the crushing weight of audience capture and commercial platform incentives. But today we're shifting gears. We're moving from diagnosis to our actual evolutionary blueprint. We really need to ask, what if the future of trustworthy AI doesn't come from the biggest AI companies at all?
It's a question that completely flips the script on everything we're constantly told about the future of tech, right? We spend so much time agonizing over these monolithic, big tech truth machines, these massive, commercially captured networks that are literally mathematically incentivized to flatter us just to keep us scrolling. But what if the genuine cure to AI and shitification doesn't come from some massive global platform? What if, actually, the answer is completely decentralized?
Section 1. From monastery cell to epistemic hub. Okay, let's dive right into this.
In our last explainer, we talked about building a private AI relay station. And that starts out as what we call a monastery cell. It's essentially a defensive, isolated bunker built specifically to shield you from the relentless noise and the sycophancy of the open internet. But if it stays completely isolated in that bunker, its value is totally capped. The true evolution happens when it becomes an epistemic hub. By using open protocols, visible memory, and shareable correction logs, that solitary, defensive little cell can actually transform into a rigorous, highly connected node within a much larger federated network. It stops being a bunker, and it starts being a community.
Section 2. The Usenet lesson.
To really understand how this federated network could work, we kind of have to look back to the past. And we have a great historical precedent, but we need to use it strictly as inspiration, not as some source of blind nostalgia. Think back to 1979. Usenet launched as this beautifully open, decentralized system for sharing knowledge globally across very specific topic-based communities. Nobody centrally owned it. It completely proved that incredibly valuable knowledge can emerge without a corporate overlord. But fast forward to 2001, and its searchable archive was absorbed by Google, triggering complete and utter enshittification. The fatal flaw? The old Usenet was entirely defenseless against modern spam, manipulation, provenance loss, and platform capture.
Which brings us to Section 3, the new model and the monk's rulebook.
That historical lesson gives us our core design hypothesis. We absolutely do not want one giant centralized system. We want a federated network of small, highly defensible, independent epistemic hubs. And who's running these hubs? Well, spoiler alert, it's not tech billionaires or Silicon Valley startups. We're talking about independent journalists, researchers, educators, libraries. Maybe it's patient communities tracking a specific illness or local civic groups. What ties them all together is that they are topic-based communities driven by a real relational warmth for their members, but, and this is crucial, they are bounded by incredibly strict epistemic discipline when it comes to the facts. Every single one of these hubs has to operate by what we call the monk's rulebook. The core philosophy is beautifully simple. A healthy hub is open to signals, but slow to rewrite its constitution. It actively welcomes distant contacts, minority reports, even signals from rival tribes. But it strongly resists making immediate dopamine-fueled changes to its core set of facts. And this brilliantly illustrates how that rulebook functions in practice. Your signal inflow? It's wide and cheap. We genuinely want the wisdom of the crowd knocking on the door. But the evaluation process? That is slow, and it is computationally expensive. Just because a really loud signal arrives doesn't mean the truth changes. The hub mathematically weighs incoming information using due weight. It checks provenance, relies on verified domain expertise, and looks strictly at the correction history of the source.
Section 4. Epistemic diplomacy. Let's zoom out for a second and see how this builds. We have these small, disciplined local hubs. But what happens when these self-correcting knowledge communities actually start talking to one another? We enter the realm of epistemic diplomacy. Now, make no mistake, the goal here is absolutely not to control other tribes or force everyone into a single global consensus. But it's also not about blindly trusting everyone and creating these naive mirror chambers where literally all opinions are treated as equally valid facts. The goal is epistemic diplomacy, treating other hubs with fair, proportionate, evidence-based evaluation. So how does a local hub actually decide who to trust in this vast network? Because they definitely don't rely on vibes, follower counts, or blue check marks. Instead, they share machine-readable correction logs and claim ledgers and evaluate each other based on strict criteria.
A hub looks at another node and asks, do they have actual domain expertise? What's their historical accuracy like? And most importantly, what is their correction behavior? Are they willing to visibly show uncertainty and update their logs when they inevitably get something wrong? Or do they just quietly delete their mistakes to save face?
Section 5. Passing the Feynman test.
Okay, we need a sharp reality check here. We really have to strip away the utopianism for a minute. Small communities are not automatically good. In fact, without the exact right structure, small communities can be incredibly dangerous. They can easily decay into echo chambers, local priesthoods, or prestige bubbles that just absolutely refuse to admit when they're wrong. As a legendary physicist Richard Feynman famously warned, a system without visible self-doubt is a cult, not science. So, to prove it is genuinely seeking truth and not just flattering its local members, every single hub in this network absolutely must pass the Feynman test. This means engineering visible self-doubt directly into the architecture. You need public correction logs that anyone can audit. You need clear appeal paths. You need rotating authority so no single expert becomes a permanent dictator. And you need the active inclusion of minority reports alongside constant adversarial review.
Section 6. The limits of cryptography.
To keep this entirely realistic, we have to put some really strict guardrails around our understanding of the tech running this architecture. It is way too easy to fall into the trap of thinking that advanced tech solves human problems all on its own. So, the crucial point is this. Cryptography is incredibly powerful. It gives us secure provenance, digital signatures, timestamps, and tamper-evident logs so bad actors can't secretly alter the history of a claim. But, and this is a big but, cryptography does not equal truth. You can cryptographically sign a total lie. Truth still requires the hard, messy, human work of gathering evidence, conducting rigorous review, maintaining due weight, and honoring visible memory. In this system, AI is just a highly capable local assistant helping to manage those logs. It is absolutely not an autonomous oracle that just decides what is true for us.
Section 7. The evolutionary blueprint.
Which brings us to the ultimate goal of this entire architecture. We aren't tearing away from the major commercial platforms just for the sake of rebellion. We are doing it to build responsible, federated knowledge. The core thesis of today's explainer is this. We do not need one massive, single-truth machine run by a tech monopoly. The answer to the crisis of artificial intelligence and the collapse of the news might just be thousands of small, disciplined communities that have simply built better memories. It is a highly disciplined, incredibly hopeful alternative to the absolute despair of digital enshittification.
And to actually make that future a reality, those communities must relentlessly adhere to our core formula. Step 1. Open inflows. You have to let the signals in so you aren't isolated. Step 2. Graded authority. Weigh the evidence rigorously based on actual expertise, not popularity. Step 3. Visible memory. Never hide your mistakes. Log them permanently so the system actually learns. These are the 3 pillars that allow an open knowledge system to survive.
I want to leave you with this final, vital thought. The commercial incentives driving today's AI platforms practically guarantee their eventual decay. The noise is only going to get louder. So when those massive systems finally buckle under the weight of their own flattering hallucinations, will you and your community have the intellectual autonomy, the discipline, and the visible memory ready to build your own epistemic hub? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, keep learning and keep building.